And now, marine weather around Alaska.
All right, for tonight, we've got rain on the increase here over the southern southeast coast as rainfall intensity lightens up here in the north, but continues. Dry over the interior with lows in the 50s and 60s, quite mild with light winds from the Arctic coast down into the Gulf. This system staying south of Kodiak, and this system out here to the west spreading rain into the Pribilof Islands, eastern Aleutians, pushing into the western Alaska Peninsula late tonight, followed by showers. And for tomorrow, a portion of that moisture breaks off and brings some light rain, fog, and drizzle to the southwest coast there, Nunivak Island, and then back towards St. Matthew Island, but staying south of St. Lawrence Island. Isolated to scattered thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon over the mountainous terrain here of southern Alaska. Hot and dry in the interior. In fact, pretty warm in the Copper River Basin, looking for highs in the mid-80s. And again, hot in the Kuskokwim Valley, 80s to lower 90s over the interior, and mild temperatures all the way out to the Arctic coast. Rain pushing into the Pribilofs and eastern Aleutians with this system. Meanwhile, over the southeast coast, showers on the decrease throughout the day, and that'll lead to a mostly fair day on Thursday with some partly sunny skies to the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast, into south central Alaska. Isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms breaking out over the mountains here in the south. A little more extensive up in the central interior in the afternoon, but Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast dry with some sunshine. This system pushing rain into the southwest interior here. Bristol Bay, cooler temperatures. Kodiak Island rain starting to increase over the southern Kuskokwim Valley. And on Friday, a big area of some good solid rain will move right into the interior. And for the coastal water forecast, south coast of the Panhandle, west winds at 15 knots. North to northwest winds at 15 knots for the north coast. And for Lynn Canal, south winds at 15. Light south winds for Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, southeast at 10 knots. Those will be northwest at 10 knots for Clarence Strait on Thursday. Otherwise, Stevens Passage, south winds at 10, 15 knots for Lynn Canal. And for the central and south coast here, west winds 10 to 15 knots and light west-northwest breeze at 10 knots for the north coast. Cook Inlet tomorrow, variable winds 10 to 15 knots. Prince William Sound, southeast at 15, and the North Gulf Coast, south to southwest winds at 15 knots. Southwest at 20 for the Barren Islands and Kemishak Bay, south winds 20 knots. And for the day Thursday, Cook Inlet, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots, so picking up a little bit with seas building 3 to 5 feet. Small craft advisories for Kemishak Bay. Southeast winds increasing to 25 knots and east winds picking up to 20 knots for the Barren Islands. Otherwise, for the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound, looking at light variable winds at 10 knots. For the Kodiak Island area, for tomorrow, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Light and variable for the Alaska Peninsula, southwest at 10 for Bristol Bay. And then for Thursday, Alaska Peninsula, winds southwest 20 knots with seas running 4 to 5 feet. West at 20 knots for Bristol Bay, and Kodiak Island, variable winds 10 to 15. Eastern Aleutians, variable winds 10 to 15 knots tomorrow. Central Aleutians, south at 15 knots with 2 to 5 foot seas. And variable to southwest winds 10 to 15 knots for the western Aleutians, so staying pretty light through tomorrow. And then we'll see some small craft advisories show up here from Kiska to Shemya for east winds picking up to 25 knots. South to southeast winds 20 knots, Amchitka Island, Adak and Atka, south at 15. And south to southwest winds 15 to 20 knots for the eastern Aleutians. Southwest coast, west-northwest tomorrow at 10 to 15 knots. Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, north winds at 10 knots. Southeast winds 15 knots for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. And for Thursday, southwest 15 to 20 knots for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island, south to southwest at 15 along the coast. And for Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, winds will be southwest at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. We got small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast tomorrow. Southwest winds at 25 knots. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west-southwest 15 to 20 knots. And the Chukchi Sea, south winds just 5 to 10 knots. Then on Thursday, Chukchi Sea, southwest 5 to 15 knots for the wind direction and speed, and south at 10 knots for the western Arctic coast, and for the central and east side, east to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots.